Good afternoon, friends. I'm jumping on this evening. Actually, it's this afternoon from Stillwater, Oklahoma. In-laws home for the weekend for football game. And what's on my mind? The Torah portions of this week. If you're studying the Torah portions, this will mean a lot to you. We're actually not going to be talking about the specific Torah portion, but we're going to kind of go back. We've been talking about the faith of Abraham. What was Abraham's faith actually like that he would be called the father of the faithful? What did the verses mean when it is recorded multiple times for us that Abraham believed God and it was accredited to him as righteousness? What does that mean from the Torah perspective, from the beginning? So it's important that we understand these things so that we can grasp what our purpose is, what our mission is here. So these are things we've been talking about in our Torah group for the past few weeks since we re-rolled the scroll. Still in Genesis right now. Today in particular, I wanted to talk about what is the New Covenant? What does it mean? Can you explain it? Can you say what it is? For that matter, can you explain to somebody what is the Besorah, or the good news? Can you explain what that means? What's very interesting about these matters is if you have experienced this and you are experiencing the good news daily by God's Spirit of truth, or Ruach of God, which we're going to look at today, you're going to be able to articulate that to others, which is indeed why you are still here, to communicate the message of the good news to all souls. And that good news, if you've been through the divine fire teaching and you understand these Torah principles, you're going to see the good news is in Genesis 1, where Yeshua speaks a word that he is still speaking today. If you're interested in a divine fire event, or if you've heard these teachings before and you want to host another one, please reach out to me. This is foundational for our faith to understand these things. But today, what is New Covenant? We're going to look at what the prophets said it was. The couple of texts we're going to be in is going to be in Jeremiah 31 and in Ezekiel 36. So you can look at both of those. Okay. Let's see here. We're going to start with Jeremiah 31. Should be on your screen. Here the days are coming, says Adonai, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Yehuda. Okay, so what things I want you to be looking out for in this text, honing in on what the new covenant means so that you can understand it for yourself, experience it, articulate it. Okay, so the new covenant, I'm going to do a fast summary of this so that you can look out for these words. The new covenant, in short, equals the new Torah mind, written on the heart, written on the mind. Heart and mind are the same thing. And the new spirit. So new covenant is new Torah mind and new spirit manifesting in Hesed and Emet. It's going to be manifest, and the evidence is going to be loving, compassionate kindnesses in the boundaries of truth. This is how it's going to manifest. Okay, this is what the new covenant is. So the prophets Jeremiah and Ezekiel prophesied about spirit and truth, Ruach and Emet, that Yeshua, our Messiah, taught the very first preacher. This is going to be in John 4, where he spoke with the Samaritan woman. Jeremiah is the first to mention the words new covenant. And here's what we need to understand. The original language is what matters, because it gives us the vision of our purpose and our mission, right? So he is the first to mention these words, new covenant, which in Hebrew literally means renewed covenant. Why is this important? Well, it's the same word used for new moon, Chadash. The moon, we know, is not an entirely new moon each month, is it? It's renewed. And in fact, this is our sign in the heavens to be renewed, experience renewal month by precious month, reflecting the life-giving light of the sun, right? So let's look at this. Let's read this again. Here, the days are coming, says Adonai, when I will make a Brit Hadashah, new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Yehudah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their fathers from the day I took them by their hand and brought them out of the land of Egypt, because they for their part violated my covenant, even though I for my part was the husband to them, says Adonai. For this is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Adonai. Here it is. I will put my Torah within them, literally in the middle, and I will write it on their hearts, which is mind. The word in Hebrew is leb. Heart and mind is the same thing. So I'm going to write it on their minds. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will any of them teach his fellow community member or his brother, know Adonai, for all will know me, from the least of them to the greatest, because I will forgive their wickedness and remember their sins no more. So we're going to look closer at this Brit Hadashah, this new covenant, in order to know it, in order to understand it. This Brit Hadashah that Jeremiah teaches us is Adonai putting Torah in the middle, engraving Torah on the mind, and so making the people know, which in Hebrew means to intimately experience Adonai, the preeminent king and judge, Elohim. Okay. Ezekiel's prophecy looks like this. Look for this. It's going to be a giving and moving of something also, which is we're going to see is this stony, resistant mind. Okay, now this is going to be the double-mindedness that has beset the soul since Genesis 3, which is why it's so important that we understand Genesis 1, 2, 3, and its Hebraic context and the Jewish foundation of these words are going to reveal to us what happened, and also reveal to us the remedy and the hope we have in Yeshua Messiah, who spoke those first words in Genesis 1, Yehi Or, exist, light. Okay, so now we're going to look at Ezekiel 36. So let me take you to Ezekiel 36, and we're going to look at verse 22. Therefore, tell the house of Israel that Adonai Elohim says this: I am not going to do this for your sake, house of Israel, but for the sake of my holy name, which you have been profaning among the nations where you went. I will set apart my great name to be regarded as holy, since it has been profaned in the nations. You profaned it among them. The nations will know that I am Adonai, says Adonai, when before their eyes I am set apart through you to be regarded as holy. For I will take you from among the nations. I will gather you from all the countries and return you to your own soil. And I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your uncleanness and from all your idols. Here it is. I will give you a new heart. Remember, I said heart is mind. I'm going to give you a new mind, a new mindset. This should immediately evoke, if you're familiar with the scriptures that talk about, we have the mind of Messiah. Okay, and be transformed. How are we transformed? By the renewing, again, there's some renewing of the mind. Okay, I'm going to give you a new mind and put a new Ruach, new breath, new spirit inside you. I will take the stony, resistant heart out of your flesh, and I will give you a pliable heart of flesh. I will put my Ruach, my breath, inside you to enliven you and cause you to live. And cause you to live by my laws. Respect my rulings and obey them. Okay, so let's talk about Ezekiel's prophecy. This new mind and new spirit, God's spirit, they are going to lead to actions that make holy God's character. Anytime you hear the word God's name or the name of Yeshua, anytime you hear that word, we have to understand that it means his character. His character. So on a side note, when we say we've done something in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah, what we're really saying is the thing that we have done is in the same character as Yeshua, our Messiah. So we have to be very careful. We have to understand these words. We must not be ignorant of this living word. Okay. So these actions are having the new mind and the new spirit are going to lead to actions that make holy God's character. Why? Because we see earlier up in here that the people were profaning the name, the character of God. How were they profaning? By their actions. It's not the character of Adonai Elohim that we're portraying to others. Okay. So our actions tell the story of who we serve. Have to know that. Okay. So profane literally means to make common. Just going to make common. Name of God, make things of the spirit as we treat them as just common. That's what profane means. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal at all. It's not the biggest deal. It's common to this world. And that's what profane means. Okay. And what are these actions? How will these actions play out? How will these actions play out? Teaches us right here at the end of verse 27. The actions are going to look like this to the soul who has received God's spirit of Torah. Okay, God's spirit of truth. We are now going to be walking in his prescription. Okay. And guarding and accomplishing his judgments. What he says is right, holy, just, and pure. Good. We allow him in our lives to be the definers of good, reflecting the character of Messiah. Okay. Herein we see that the renewed covenant means the new mind with Torah engraved upon it. This is the emet, the truth, and the new spirit, the new Ruach of God Spirit, truth. Okay. Again, Yeshua, our Messiah, teaches us about his Ruach of Emet, recorded in John 14. John 14, verse 15 says, if you love me, you will keep my commands. And I will ask the Father, and he will give you another comforting counselor like me, the Ruach of Emet, the Spirit of truth, to be with you forever. The world cannot receive him because it neither sees nor knows him. You know him because he is staying with you and will be united with you. So, Torah, we've not discussed here on this teaching. But Torah just means instruction. It comes from the root word yareh that means to hit the mark. So Torah is the truth of God. It's the instruction that allows us to hit the mark. So Torah gives us aim, and the Spirit gives life. Just like the body without the Spirit is dead, we need the Ruach HaKodesh, and we need the truth. So in John 4, Yeshua said this to the Samaritan woman, that an hour is coming, and it is here now, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, in Ruach and Emet, for the Father is seeking such people as his worshipers. God is Ruach, and those who worship him must worship in Ruach and Emet. Yeshua, our Messiah, the Anointed One, said this in John 4. So looking at the entirety of the Tanakh and the Brit Hadashah, which you know, or you refer to as, the Old and New Testaments, okay, we gather that when a soul enters into this new covenant, the soul begins to walk in God's Torah Emet, God's Torah truth, by his Ruach, as I said, by his Spirit of loving, compassionate kindnesses. Okay. It's not either or. It's yes. Okay. This was indeed the faith that Abraham had and was declared to him by the good news himself, our salvation, Yeshua, our Messiah. Go read that in Galatians 3, where it talks about the faith of Abraham, and that the Tanakh preached the good news to Abraham. I mean, it's completely fascinating. And then you're going to find that in context is going to teach us that it was the good news himself, Yeshua, our Messiah, who spoke with Abraham. Genesis 12 through 18, I believe. Go read that. It's quite incredible. Okay. So Matthew 5, our Messiah stated emphatically, here's what he said about the Torah: do not think that I came to abolish the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to abolish, but to fulfill. Man, I do it until heaven and earth pass away. Not the smallest letter or yod shall ever pass away from the Torah until all things come to pass. Therefore, to have allegiance to and be in allegiance with Yeshua, the Anointed One, is to have allegiance to, be in alliance with his Spirit of Torah, truth. Remember what the new covenant is. It's the Torah engraved upon the heart, and the new Spirit that renews the life. And that soul is now walking in that light, in that life of God's word, keeping his prescription, guarding his words, his commands, his judgment. And that is a witness to the others around that you too can enter the light. You too can enter into this Brit Hadashah, this new, renewed covenant. Okay. So let's kind of flip that a little bit. To not care to even understand these prophecies from Jeremiah and Ezekiel is to remain asleep and subject the soul then to spirits of deception, error, and thus an instruction of sin. Sin literally means to miss the mark in life, to miss the mark of Torah life. Okay, so not caring to understand these prophecies from Jeremiah and Ezekiel, it's going to cause the soul to remain asleep and subject the soul to spirits of deception and error, and the instruction of sin, which leads to death, which was exactly what Paul was teaching in its Torah context. He wasn't saying anything different. He was teaching against the soul trying to walk according to a pattern of behavior without God's Spirit. No loyal, loving, compassionate kindness and concern for another. It was only about keeping rules to preserve their own soul. It was very self-focused. Okay. Torah is part of the New Covenant, and it must be written upon the mind. So we have to give our minds over to God's Spirit of truth to teach us, to have this engraved on our minds, to have this aim in life engraved upon our minds, and then care compassionately for the souls around us. Okay, because this is what it means to walk in spirit and truth, so that we do not miss the mark and walk according to the instruction of sin and death, which is again what Paul taught. So Psalm 1:1 and 1:2 says, "How blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the path of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the Torah of Adonai, and in his Torah he meditates day and night." Okay. So when you look up those words in the original language, I did a recent brief teaching on Instagram about the word meditate, and I said that there were two words in the scripture for meditate, and they teach us what this vision is, because we're already meditating anyway. One is Haggah, that means to speak and murmur to yourself a word in contemplation over and over and over. So it's the things you say to yourself over and over and over. You're always meditating. And then the second word is Ziach, which means to be swept away, as in to be swept away in thought. So giving our minds over to the Torah means giving our minds over to the light, which means we then begin to speak words of light over ourselves and be swept away with light, with the darkness, which is encroaching upon every soul on this planet. You see it, you feel it. You can't give your mind to that. Well, you can, but it's not wise and it's not God's will. Okay, so now then, should the soul want to do good, so Elohim had taught Cain, giving him that divine option in Genesis 4's divine intervention. Genesis 4, go back and read that. You Torah students know exactly what I'm talking about. That soul then began to walk in the middle of the Holy Spirit's power, which is loving, compassionate kindnesses, hesed, and the boundaries of liberating delights, emet. Yeshua said, after all, in John 8, "If you abide in my word, you will know emet, you will know the truth. And this emet, truth, will continue to liberate your bound soul." Okay. So, in short, this is what the new covenant is. It's the new Torah mind plus the Spirit that then begins to manifest in loving kindness and truth in the life. So there's a lot more that I would love to say about that, but mostly I just wanted to call your attention to what New Covenant means, that the first to ever speak of this new covenant was Jeremiah. And Ezekiel gave another vision, which was the same vision, just from a different angle. What this means, somebody walking in spirit and truth. It's the renewed covenants. We're going to be renewed. All right. So if you have any questions about any of this, I would love to chat with you about it. The Torah is necessary to walk in spirit and truth. The Spirit's necessary to walk in the Torah. So reach out to me if you have any questions, or if you want to learn more about the portions, or if you have any insight into this week's Torah portion and let's see what this portion by it say was this week's portion. He went out, it's talking about Jacob and Rachel and Leah and Laban. It's a lot there. So give me a shout out, and would love to talk with you. If you're interested in the Divine Fire teaching, look me up at mariasofchrist.com. You can contact me there. Or the 21-day Musar Life Journey, which is going to be starting on November 21st. It's on a Sunday morning about 7, probably 7:30. We'll just say 7:30. See you guys. Shabbat Shalom, and have a great day. Have a great evening.